Now, one thing I really want your generation to embrace is that the Earth is a closed system. We cannot leave the Earth. There's no place to go. The Earth is a closed system.
The Earth is a closed system.
We cannot leave the Earth.
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 The Earth is a closed system. We cannot leave the Earth. There's no place to go.
You looked around at this flat, beautiful land, and all this sun. I asked the question, how many days of sun do you get a year? 320. That's pretty good. And decided that Boulder City was the perfect place to generate solar power. In fact, as I was talking to the folks from Sempra, they were explaining that this location is almost optimal for solar power generation. And not only because it's flat, transmission lines were already here, the sun is traveling, and there's no haze, and it's absolutely clear. And so this is an extraordinary opportunity for the community. The sun is traveling, and the sun is traveling, and there won't be as many new jobs and new businesses. Some of these folks want to dismiss the promise of solar power and wind power and fuel-efficient cars. In fact, they make jokes about it. One member of Congress, who shall remain unnamed, called these jobs phony. Called them phony jobs. I mean, think about that mindset, that attitude that says because something is new, it must not be real. You know, if these guys were around when Columbus set sail, they'd be charter members of the Flat Earth Society. We were just talking about this, that a lack of imagination, a belief that you can't do something in a new way, that's not how we operate here in America. That's not who we are. That's not what we're about. 60 years ago, when the Russians beat us into space, we didn't deny Sputnik was up there. We didn't argue about the science or shrink our research and development budget. We built a space program almost overnight, and 12 years later, we were walking on the moon.
There are still a few who insist that climate change is one big hoax, even a political conspiracy. My friends, these people are so out of touch with science that they believe rising sea levels don't matter because in their view, the extra water is just going to spill out over the sides of a flat Earth. They're wrong, obviously. For the benefit of those who may still question the 97% of peer-reviewed studies on climate change, let me just underscore, you don't need to be a scientist to know that the Earth is round, that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west.
They've been talking down new sources of energy. They dismiss wind power. They dismiss solar power. They make jokes about biofuels. They were against raising fuel standards. I guess they like gas guzzlers. They think that's good for our future. We're trying to move towards the future. They want to be stuck in the past. And we've heard this kind of thinking before. Let me tell you something. If some of these folks were around when Columbus set sail, they must have been founding members of the Flat Earth Society. They would not have believed that the world was round. But more broadly, we've got to move beyond partisan politics on this issue. I want to be clear. I am willing to work with anybody. Republicans, Democrats, Independents, Libertarians, Greens, anybody to combat this threat on behalf of our kids. I'm open to all sorts of new ideas.
maybe better ideas, to make sure that we deal with climate change in a way that promotes jobs and growth. Nobody has a monopoly on what is a very hard problem, but I don't have much patience for anyone who denies that this challenge is real. We don't have time for a meeting of the Flat Earth Society.
Let me ask you this.
No,
let me ask you. I'm going to let you finish. I'm going to let you finish. Do you actually know what the definition of fake news is?
What we're doing right now.
It's the motherfucking Eagle Double G.
Snoop Dogg.
You know what happened with the D.R.E.
Oh, Dinah. It's just a rabbit with a waistcoat and a watch.
Oh, my fairy whiskies. I'm late.
Now, this is curious. What could a rabbit possibly be late for? Please, sir!
Oh, I'm overdue. I'm really in a stew. No time to say goodbye. Hello, I'm late.
My, what a peculiar place to have a party. You know, Dinah, we really shouldn't be doing this. After all, we haven't been invited, and curiosity often leads to trouble. Goodbye, Dinah. Goodbye. What if I should fall right through the center of the earth? Oh. And come out the other side where people walk upside down? Oh, but that's silly. Nobody... Oh! Oh, Mr. Rabbit, wait!
These people in the space program, NASSholes I call them. In case you haven't heard, the latest disaster for the rest of the universe is that the United States is going to go to Mars. Okay? Oh, yeah. We're going to go to Mars. And then, of course, we're going to colonize deep space.
The bit is about that we are on a rock flying through the universe, which is the most spectacular thing anybody could ever possibly imagine, and yet nobody brings it up ever. People talk about crazy, boring, mundane things when we are on a rock flying through space, and that never comes up. And that above you is the most spectacular thing you could ever look at ever, and yet people take these huge trips to go see the Grand Canyon, and they'll like stare like, oh my God, it's amazing, you have to see it. And, you know, it changes your life. And I'm like, how about up there? Like, look at all that.
Speaking of flying through space, you don't think the moon landing is real?
No, I don't. No. Do you?
Yeah.
Why do you think the moon landing is real? Why don't you tell me why?
I saw it on television.
Oh, you're a genius. Oh, beep that. Hit that.
We'll bleep it. No, it's okay. We got
That's genius. You saw it on TV? That's awesome. I'm going to show you some CGI. I'm going to show you King Kong. I saw that on TV, too. There's an 80-foot gorilla. He's running around kidnapping white chicks. You should check it out. 1972 was the last time a human being has been through the Van Allen radiation belt. 1972. That's the last time. There's been only 7 trips ever that human beings have ever gone past 400 miles. Every single space station mission, every space shuttle, every satellite, all of those are inside the protective Van Allen radiation belts, which start at 1,000 miles. They go from 1,000 miles to, depending on who you ask, if you ask NASA, 24,000 miles. If you ask James Van Allen, the guy who discovered it, it's 67,000 miles of intense radiation that's in a gigantic donut band that covers around the Earth. Now, even if you got outside of that band, you have to deal with solar cycles. There's the apex of a 20-year solar cycle was between 1969 and 1972. All the time when these guys are making those missions. Any one of those guys out there in those tiny little aluminum shielded crafts would have been killed instantly during any solar flare.
Why fake it?
Thank you, Carlos.
Why not fake it?
You should open with that.
If you look at any of the footage online, it looks ridiculous. It looks stupid. If you look at the videos, it looks ridiculous and dumb. You know why? Because in 1969, nobody anticipated that we were going to have VCRs and the internet. We were going to be able to watch that. They wanted to win the Cold War. The Soviet Union's had over 10 firsts in space. First man in space, first woman in space, first they had everything. First dog in space. They had first satellite. They were so much more advanced than the Americans were. But the Americans were more advanced in trickery, and that's what they did. They figured out a way to fake it. That's why when Neil Armstrong got back, first of all, he went insane. They went into a deep depression. So did Buzz Aldrin. He became a huge alcoholic. He gave no interviews. Neil Armstrong still to this day will not give interviews. He gave one speech that he gave at the 25th anniversary.
Return. On the 25th anniversary of the event in 1994, Neil Armstrong made a rare public appearance and held back tears as he spoke these brief cryptic remarks before the next generation of taxpayers as they toured the White House.
Today we have with us a group of students among America's best. To you we say, we have only completed a beginning. We leave you much that is undone. There are great ideas undiscovered, breakthroughs available to those who can remove one of truth's protective layers.
Of the moon landing, and this is what he said in front of America's best honor students. He said, "We have here amongst us America's best and brightest," and the quote was, "You will achieve many great things if you could peel away one of truth's hidden layers." That's a speech this guy gives standing in front of the top honor students of the country. Not, "I went to the moon." He doesn't say that. He gives this cryptic speech.
At this time, I'd like to introduce the Apollo 11 crew, astronauts Neil Armstrong, Michael Collins, Edwin Aldrin. Neil?
It was our pleasure to have participated in one great adventure. It's an adventure that took place not just in the month of July, but rather one that took place in the last decade. We all here and the people listening in today had the opportunity to share that adventure over its developing and unfolding in the past months and years. It's our privilege today to share with you some of the details of that final month of July that was certainly the highlight for the three of us of that decade.
It was John F. Kennedy who in 1961 challenged the nation to put a man on the moon before the end of the decade. And it was July 20th, 1969, that the incredible goal of landing on the lunar surface was finally realized.
Sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a
July 16, 1969, 9:32 a.m. Apollo 11 thundered from the pad at the Kennedy Space Center. The mission went without a hitch, and 4 days later, the lunar module known as Eagle separated from the command module and initiated a powered descent to the moon. With almost 1 billion people watching around the world, Neil Armstrong stepped to the surface.
Okay, engine stop.
From the Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C., our pleasure to welcome the crew of Apollo 11, Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, Mike Collins. Gentlemen, good morning all.
Good morning, Brian.
In 20 years, have you grown kind of weary of being asked about this? What's the story?
Oh, I don't think so. We really enjoy remembering those very special days, and actually not too many days come up when we get the chance to reflect on it.
Neil, you are today, by all accounts, a very private man who kind of shuns publicity. Is that a result of the glare of your achievement?
No, I don't really shun publicity, but I'm not naturally attracted to it, so I probably don't volunteer for as many jobs as some of the others.
Buzz Aldrin, Mike Collins, does it seem like yesterday? Does it seem like 20 years ago, or does it seem even more distant than that?
Well, I've been thinking a good bit about it this last year while I've been writing a book, but it still does seem like a good while back. I'm the first one that's going to reach 60 in this group, and it's going to happen during 1990.
Mike Collins, but for today, how often are you reminded of your achievement?
Well, if I go out back and look up in the sky and see the moon, either I can remember where I was 20 years ago, or I can pretend I've never been there, and it works for me either way.
Now, Bill Clinton, in page 100, I think it's 156 of his book, My Life, he gives this story about how when he was a kid, he was working with this carpenter. And this carpenter said, you know, I don't believe man landed on the moon. It was 3 months after the moon landing. And he said, I thought that guy was ridiculous. He said, you know what? I don't believe anything those TV fellows show you. He said, after 8 years in the White House, I thought maybe that guy was ahead of his time.
Wow.
This is in Bill Clinton's autobiography.
Wow.
This is in his book. There's no way people went on the moon. There's no way.
By the way,
It's impossible today. China wants to go back to the moon. They don't even have a clue how to do it. They're going to try to get there in 2020. America thinks we could possibly go back in 2017. All of the hard data, the telemetry data, 14,000 reels is missing. No one can find it. What the telemetry data
Isn't that amazing?
That's the binary
Isn't that
data,
amazing?
the ones and the zeros that show the distance between the command module and the Earth during every step of the way, on the way to the moon and back, which you can't fake. They don't have that. They can't find it, which you would think would be in a locked golden vault in the Smithsonian.